G'day, my name's EB-Knispel and I'm going to be bringing you some tank gameplay on Province Breakthrough. Loadout is on the right hand screen as usual. So it's probably pretty apparent that I haven't played Battlefield 5 for a while now. I just think the game has reached its pinnacle for me. It has not much else to offer for me. But I think Battlefield 5 got a lot more hate than it actually should have. I think the game actually was somewhat rewarding in its own way, and I find that actually the tanking wasn't as horrible as people thought it was. It was kind of pretty easy for me to transition to how the tanking works in this game because I actually played a lot of War Thunder, so the turret system was quite familiar with me. So being able to play aggressively with the tanking a lot comes down to actually where your crosshead placement is. So knowing where the enemy is going to be and when they're going to pick you from is where you're going to be putting your turret. So if you had that kind of already as a strong part of your skill set, you would find that tanking transitioning from Battlefield 4 to this wasn't too difficult. Either way, you could make the argument that tanking was less skillful in Battlefield 5 or less skillful in BF4, but I think the tanking between the two games was so different and unique in their own way that you couldn't really compare the two. Both of them had their weaknesses and their strengths, and it was just a matter of how you dealt with it and what your viewpoint of it was. Anyway, let's get that out of the way because that topic could go on forever. We want to bring up the game itself at hand. As you can see here, I'm running the Panzer IV, and my loadout is quite interesting and unique. So, there's a reason why I'm actually using this loadout. Yes, I'm actually at a disadvantage versus other tanks that are using a loadout that was actually more suited for killing vehicles. But when you consider on this map how Breakthrough works, every time after a certain point in the map, the vehicles for the enemy team no longer spawn. So if I position myself correctly and pick out my priority targets and minimizing myself getting into 2v1s against their vehicles, I'm going to actually get rewarded in the long run, so that when it gets further later into the game, it's actually really hard for the remaining vehicles to do their job as well as actually even be able to spawn in at all. One of the things I also used is the flares, which makes it really easy for me to tell where the enemy is coming from. And my understanding through motor control learning is the more that you know where something's going to be coming from, so there's less unknowns, your actual reaction time and preparation to fire and shoot and track actually becomes even better because you're actually knowing what's going to come before it even actually comes. So that's like the mechanical side of why having prior information makes a huge difference. It actually reduces the cognitive demand sort of on the brain without getting too technical and sciencey about it. And something that, to be honest, it was only brought up in my sports science degree for a little bit. Also, you can see that with the canister shell, any infantry that is actually decent at actually knowing how to peek at the tank and dump fire rockets, I can use the canister shell to basically one-tap them and get them out of the way and dealt with. So with the maximum splash damage I can use from the, in brackets, stubby loadout I wouldn't call, for the Panzer IV, with the maximum splash damage, what you can do is on some of those areas where people are hiding around corners on top or behind objects, if you aim to the top of the side of them, the splash damage kind of like wraps around a little, and so you can kind of kill people behind objects when they're not using cover effectively, or kind of not picking you from an angle that's suited for countering the tank. You can also see the way I'm positioning myself, I always kind of have an exit route, which is always something you need because there's always... Let me re-say that. If you're a Battlefield veteran, you know that in these public servers that anything can change in the matter of a couple of seconds. You try and plan for the unexpected as best as you can. You can see the way I'm also positioned on this map, that we have a tank on one side of the map and one on the other. This way we can kind of make it like a kill zone and kind of keep in track on the enemy vehicles. I can't remember exactly when this game was played, but this might have been around when the Greyhound still had a texture issue, where it wouldn't actually render in properly and actually be invisible until it got into close range, which is a huge problem, which you can kind of see now. These Greyhounds were super deadly when that was a thing in the game. So if you weren't having total attention on what was going on around you, keeping check of on the scoreboard when the vehicles had spawned in, it was quite easy to get swarmed or zerged, especially if there was multiple of them as well. Also, one thing you got to keep in mind on is if your ammo depots are actually up and able to supply you, because if you run back to those and you're trying to like clutch yourself into like get a bit more ammo or like a repair off, and you know that they're not there, then that's a bit of an issue and a bit of a problem. But luckily for most people that played Battlefield 5 for an extended period of time, the pub players actually picked up on having these ammo depots up were actually beneficial for the team. You can see also that enemy team's kind of like actually wising up here and they're actually using smoke nades to block my field of vision. And with the smoke nades, it doesn't really matter. Like if you just dump fire that everywhere, it just makes it a lot more harder for me to actually see what you're doing. So the key to countering a tank is a combination of assault players and medics still, in my opinion. You can see here I'm just trying to get rid of the stranglehold that I kind of have on this side, because if they get this position here, they got plenty of spawn points to kind of like re-get themselves and put constant pressure on the flag. So the fact that they're trying to take this side is actually pretty smart. But you can see here I'm getting a little bit nervous. My flank is getting exposed, so I'm pulling back a little bit and just kind of like putting myself in a position where I can cause maximum damage to them, but at the same time not risk myself getting flanked from behind. You can also see here as well that they're actually using some of their call-ins effectively as well. So being able to use those artillery strikes, you got to watch out for those. You can kind of like stay in them a little bit and take a bit of a risk with it, but if sometimes you might get the RNG effect where like all of them hit you at once and then you just get absolutely destroyed. So hanging on the edge of them is not too bad. Also, one key thing is defending this sector in particular is stopping them getting inside the building, because once they're inside the building it gets really difficult for you to clear it, and it takes quite a lot of ammo and multiple shells to actually fully get them out there. And actually in some ways you can only hit certain parts of where they're actually hiding inside by getting around the whole building, which will unfortunately, if they're holding the ground in front of you correctly, you won't be able to do that at all. So they basically got a free spawn point where they can keep spawning people onto the flag and tip the tide of the burn of the flag. As you can see here, I've got actually a fair bit of support here, some repairs going on, but the enemy's kind of taken note of where I'm positioning myself on that map, and so they're focusing their artillery on me. So yeah, sure, it's not going to completely destroy me. It's going to maybe knock out my turret here and knock my tracks out, but look, my mates that are actually trying to repair me are completely exposed. So it was actually a smart play on their behalf. So I just pull on back and try and get to this ammo depot and get some more ammo and some HP, and will also give my chance to actually pull back and survive, because every time one of my teammates die out in the out of bounds zone, that's extra tickets to them. Yeah, sure, it's probably good for the farm, but also it's pretty good for me to take the win. That teammate there did actually a really smart thing as well, taking out the ammo depot and blowing it up, because I'm pretty sure once that one's blown up, they actually can't reuse it again. So it's kind of, you know, sabotaging on the way out. You can see me trying to get rid of all the players and just causing a bit more havoc as I try and withdraw myself to a position. It's a little bit of a risky position here, but I have the kind of the support here to support me. So when they come over the hill, they're going to kind of just go, oh crap, and just run straight into a tank. And just that's a couple of free easy kills. But they'll only work for a couple of attempts and then they'll wise up. But either way, getting a couple of extra 5 kills here, cheeky kills there, and then repositioning yourself, that keeps you the enemy guessing on what you're doing. And if you can be unpredictable, that makes it really hard for the enemy team to counteract you, and once again it makes it a lot more harder for them to fix. You can see them constantly using artillery effectively here, and here comes the next push. You see the smoke nades coming down, trying to get in a really good position, doing smart plays, but I'm in a position where I can counter this. So I kind of push this rubber band, keeping an eye that that little rocket there has got a lot of assault players, a spawn beacon and all that. But what I'm doing here is just making it really hard for them to get into this building, or making them pay the price of, you know, a dozen or 2 tickets to even get themselves to the foot ground here. And I'm in a position where I can constantly quickly get back to my repair depot and get some HP and go back forward. And I throw my flares up so my teammates know roughly where they are. And you can see right here like how strong the flares can be. But when they're inside the smoke, it doesn't really work that way. So yeah, once again, if you're dealing with pesty tank players in Battlefield 5 still playing that game, your meta is using assaults and smoke nades. There is no excuse to, I think, in my opinion, not being able to counteract a tank, especially when you have the numbers as well. And it's very apparent in competitive as well, from the competitive games that I've seen of Battlefield 5, as well as in Battlefield 4 when versing vehicles. You can see here I'm putting myself in a position where I can kind of just keep myself minimally exposed, but keep spamming those shells in and helping my teammates, keeping them a foothold on this flag, so then they can keep them kind of bogged down. The reason why I'm on this flag instead of B is because where B is, if they are using their tanks correctly, etc., and their anti-tank weaponry, it's actually really hard, and you're actually really exposed out there, and you basically just get deleted from the screen. And from this position, when if A does get actually overwhelmed, I can kind of just go back up to B and help myself out. I think I'm not doing too good driving right here, because I think most of the time I've played this map, it's never really got to this sector, especially when I'm defending, because my defending game is actually really strong. Most games I play on the defending side of this, and when I'm in a tank, they don't even get really past the first sector, because I just focus the armor the whole entire time, which is another thing you need to consider, is keeping that armor focused. Keep an eye on where they are, and if you keep shutting them down, it's going to make it really hard for them to push, and the only way they're going to be able to push is if they keep using their the support call-ins, as well as smoke nades and anti-tank weaponry effectively. But even then, it's requires a. But speaking of our coordination, the artillery that they're using here is actually just a hair off from actually taking out the supply depot. So if you're actually really struggling to hit the repair depot, throwing an arty strike on the on it will actually make a huge difference. You can see here that the armor is actually in a really good head glitching position here, trying to focus me. But with the Panzer IV loadout, what you can actually do is sit behind cover just behind a ridge, and if you know exactly roughly where they're positioning themselves, you can use the shells drop to actually rain down a couple of extra shots on them before they even get to shoot back at you. And generally, most of the time, the tank that fires the first shot and connects with the enemy tank generally wins, depending on what kind of shell, etc., that you're using as well. But either way, if you can get 1 or 2 shots on the enemy tank before they can even peek you, like, I don't know about you, but that's a huge plus in my books right there. So you can see here, I'm just trying to keep an eye on everything that's going on around me, as well as keeping some pressure on the A flag. But in my whole focus of actually going down for A, I didn't even realize they were actually capping B. But by that point that I realized that they were capping B and holding B, I noticed a lot of my team was actually on A flag, so there was no point for me to go over there, because I was basically trying to help my team get onto A flag. So once again, I positioned myself in a situation where, like, I could get flanked here, so playing along the outside road on this area is actually really good, because unless you've got a couple of teammates watching the riverbed there, you're going to have players that are doing what you see in this video footage right now, getting behind you. And if you've watched probably one of my tank videos, you'll hear this over and over again like a broken record: avoid letting infantry get behind you. The more times that you let people get behind you, the more likely you're going to die and end up paying the price for it. Also, one thing I would like to take note of is on this last sector here, look how far the ammo depot is back. It's ridiculous, so you're going to have to take note of how you use your ammo as well. Also, while we just noticed there as well, the V1 rocket coming in, remember on breakthrough, they come from the opposing side. So see how the Americans are in front of us right now, and notice how the rocket came from behind? It's the exact same spawn points for Conquest. So if you take that note in, and you can hear the V1 rockets coming in, you just go, oh wait, that's coming from behind me. That's an enemy one. I better dodge that one. And if you can hear it coming from the front in this last sector, you go, oh, that's a friendly one. Don't have to worry about it so much. This is where the flares become very, very strong. Yes, you can still shoot them out of the sky, so it's not completely broken, but it's more a nuisance for people that are actually camping in buildings, because they can't see it. There we go. I think that actually took out one of the tanks there as well. Anyway, you can see me being a little bit bold here, and I'm trying to push this enemy tank, put some damage in it, maybe bait him out or finish the job, because he did get hit by that V1 rocket there, so he could be low on health, but I've hit a couple of shells into him. He's probably getting a lot of repairs right now as well. So after a while, I noticed that, you know, maybe it's not best to chase him because I'll be just wasting shells because I'm not actually going to kill him. Maybe I should just start watching these alleyways as well. And I'm not going to lie, I miss city combat because look how chaotic it is here. I'm sorry, I normally don't get involved into the immersion, but like, I'm immersed right here. This is intense. This is really neck-to-neck gameplay here, and this is the last sector as well. So it's getting really competitive here. You can see me here taking note of the angles that we are trying to keep hold of, as well as which ones they're pushing. So you just got to keep an eye on things that are going around you, especially in this urban combat area. Things can get change really quickly, really fast, and get around you and dump a couple of rockets into you. You can see me constantly just checking for these windows, because this is where they're going to peek you from and shoot all those rockets from. And just keep an eye on the HUD around you. See all the X and crosses around you. Let's take note that there's possibly a place where an enemy might be actually be pushing you from as well. You can see here I'm spotted as well, so it's no secret where I am. So better always take note of that, because if you are spotted on the map, the team might coordinate themselves, which they are about to do right now. You're about to see my turret's basically disabled here, and I'm down to the last 3 shells, which, to be honest, I actually lost track of. And so I'm about to get into a scenario here which I should lose, actually. But you're about to see what's about to go down. I have a wrapper on me, I pull back, and look at this. Could not be baited any better, but also at the same time it was very risky for me to drive over those mines. If he was smart, what he should have done right there is shot the mines as I was going back, and he would have one-tapped me there. So go back and go reload, throw a flare to my flanks, that which I want to make sure that, you know, there's no enemies. You can see that there's a couple of enemies over here, so I just transition myself to go and help my team to do all of that. This angle here is not probably the most optimal as well, because once again, being out in the open, yeah, sure, you're a tank, you can only be hit by so much, but it's just silly. If standing in the open with anything from being in a tank or infantry is just a silly idea, so position yourself to have some actual cover. I start to push up in here, and I notice that someone is on the flagman, so we're going to make sure we figure out where they're pushing us from and where they actually got a foothold here. I come around this corner and have a look to see what's going on. You can see the enemy is getting really close to pushing us into our own base here and stealing the game away. And we have 120 tickets left, so it's still quite feasible for them. This is a very close game. And try and destroy those mines, because I really want to push that. Like, the second I know that all their tanks down or got some better information going, I'm going to go push straight through, because I do have my emergency repair kit. By the way, there is no reason not to take the emergency repair kit. It is one of the best things that you can have. Yeah, sure, if you get mobility hit and all that kind of stuff, and then you can have that instant repair damage part thing. But in my opinion, this will get you out of kick or clutch situations more. So it's better to keep that in reserve. You can see here, I'm not getting too overzealous. I'm waiting for the rest of the team to catch up with me. What you want to try and do is punch a hole through the enemy line and then push with the rest of your team. I throw my flare up, and you can see that there's the enemy tank pushing this middle channel here. So I'm in quite an optimal position to get a flank in here. So we're going to try and kill all these players here, get rid of them, and try and get the finishing shots on this back tank here. So I'm absolutely going berserk here. And we've got a V1 rocket coming in, and he basically does the job for me. So that's the enemy tank gone right there now. So what are we going to do? We've just had a whole bunch of enemy players killed. And unfortunately, as you can see behind me, my whole team isn't really pushing up with me. And also, I only check off and make sure that there's no one pushing those angles. You kind of like, yeah, sure, I do have friendlies there, but you can't always trust your blueberries, especially if you're not on comms or anything like that. You want to make sure you check it yourself. So we can see our enemies trying to push the riverbed, which is actually a really smart idea at this point. So I'm going to try and keep this flared and kind of shut it down. And I'm going to just keep finishing off some frags here. They've only got 37 tickets here, so it's going to be really hard for them to kind of like come back here. So I'm just going to keep note of all the positions here as well. Oh, one thing you need to take note of, guys, is there are call-in tank on this map. At close ranges with those big rockets that it has, the American Sherman tank, like, you got to watch out for that. That thing will basically destroy you in a couple of seconds. So if you see that kind of thing, I would recommend just pressing the S key and getting the hell out of there. Work with your team to try and get rid of that one. That one's a bit more of a harder challenge. You can see here I'm getting pretty hungry for the kills. I want to try and put my name on the boards here. Really get finish with a really high score. So I'm going in up ahead, trying to get some of those pressure on these kills and this, but I'm not exposing myself too much to the point where it's going to be really easy for them to swarm me. Now this right here is probably the highest kill streak that I've achieved in Battlefield 5 in a tank on a breakthrough server with no more tickets. So this is probably the pinnacle performance I'll probably ever have in this game, because to be honest, I don't see myself playing this game anytime soon. And sorry if that is a spoiler for future Battlefield 5 games that I'm going to be posting. I can see on the right hand side of the map that the enemies are kind of making a little bit of a push, so I just try and lob a couple of shells through the smoke, see what I get, just assess the situation, what's going on, changing my angles from where I'm getting focused by AT and just switch it up. I go check out on the left hand side of the map just to make sure that there's no enemies once again pushing me, and at this point they've got 7 tickets. I call the shots here. It's basically GG, and I'm just watching the angles and seeing who's bold enough to try and end the kill streak, and so I get some pretty extra kills out of this scenario. I hope you enjoyed this, and to be honest, I'm quite surprised I was able to talk for 20 minutes doing this whole entire video. So hopefully you enjoyed the content. You leave a sub, some comments, and give me some feedback on what you would like to see next in my next video. See you guys next time, and I'll see you on the battlefield. Peace.